Welcome to Q.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you?
Good. So it was funny. Sorry, thinking about what just was listening to the journal, being like listen to it recorded.
Yeah.
For a second, I'm like, what movie is that from? It took like a second, and I was like, oh no, that's the journals at the end of the show. So that's from the Jay and Bob Get Old, the podcast we do, and Kevin asked me. I had to read one of the journals I had found a bunch that I.
These are the journals that you wrote while you were in rehab.
Yeah. So throughout, again, I have a bunch because, of course, I never had one, and then like brought the same one to each rehab that I went to throughout the years. So I had a bunch, and there's just I don't know, they just make no sense. But again, it's been fun. It's been a fun part of the show that we added. In the past. I don't know what episodes, maybe the last 50 episodes or 40 or so. But I don't know. It's just interesting to hear it played
On its own.
Yeah.
I want to play. I'm going to make it even more uncomfortable. I want to play another clip from the podcast. This is because if you don't know the podcast, this is Jay or Jason and Kevin Smith talking about really deep stuff about parenting and marriage and how your bodies are changing. And this is you guys talking about, Jason, your daughter's birthday party.
We have Elmo coming, who's going to do face painting, and then he's also going to make balloon animals and such.
So wait a second. All right, but she's an Elmo fan.
Yeah, she likes Elmo. She's like,
but she's
let's go riding in my automobile. Come and take a ride with me. Elmo and Tay Diggs, yeah.
You say that as if we're like, oh, that was all of our favorite songs.
I'm sure everyone knows that one.
Jason Mewes of Jay and Silent Bob singing Elmo songs, planning little girls' birthday parties. Not exactly the Jay and Silent Bob you expect from the movies. When people go to see the podcast tapings in person, are they hoping for a Jay and Silent Bob performance, or do they typically know what they're getting?
I think for the most part, most people do, but not everyone. Still, people don't know that's what we do. I think they do expect some kind of, I should ask people. I wish I could pull them out, because Kevin, in the beginning, not in the beginning, but maybe in the middle sometimes, he, every show now, because you know what happened is, I think it was London was the first time. We probably had done maybe 50 episodes, 60, and don't quote me on that, but
right.
We went to London. It was our first out of the country live show, and we noticed that people were like, what's this, you wankers? And we realized, so Kevin from there was like, man, maybe we should start letting people know, like, hey, if I don't know if you've listened to the podcast, but if you expected this isn't what you're going to get.
We're different people than who we are in the movies. And how has doing this podcast affected your relationship with Kevin?
It's been awesome. I mean, it definitely it seems weird, but we've known each other. I think it's been about 30 years. Maybe a year less or whatever, but. We've definitely, it's crazy because we've known each other 30 years, we've been friends, but in the last 5-6 years we've been doing the podcast. Be honest, we've gotten closer, got to know more about each other. And again, I think it's because beforehand, one, we didn't spend as much time together. We did hang out.
Yeah.
We always hung out in the past 30 years, but we wouldn't hang out. There's times where we're hanging out every day, for 2 weeks straight. And not to mention, I just feel like, Kevin always, I feel like when I started doing drugs and having all the issues, he was always like, a little weary, still keeping me close because he cared about me, but I'm saying he wouldn't open up all the way because he was always so worried that that I was going to be really messed up and fall or what have you. And, but also just because I feel like for me personally, I've been more honest. Like there was always me lying a little bit, bending the truth a little bit about everything for years because of the drugs and all the stuff I was doing. So, and now in the past 5 years, it's been no holding back, like literally just being honest about everything. So we've gotten really close. Like now, he explains it, it went from being like an older brother, maybe older brother, younger brother relationship to like, best friends, business partners, and all that.
Well,
so
one of the more, speaking of that, by the way, I'm speaking with Jason Mewes, one half of the iconic cult duo, Jay and Silent Bob. They have a new podcast called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, where they explore the trials, tribulations, often embarrassing moments of middle age. They're here in Toronto to do a show. Well, some of the most interesting parts of the podcast for me, and you just hinted at it, is when Kevin talks about your drug addiction, your addiction to alcohol, and how it affected his films, and how it affected your friendship, and how when you were making these films, you were often quite messed up. I mean, you started off in Clerks, but then you go to Dogma and Chasing Amy, and Alan Rickman's in these movies, and Salma Hayek and Matt Damon. Like, how did you find your addiction interfering with your work?
I mean, well, it would always be, where I could have been enjoying and maybe learning from the process. Because again, for each movie, not so much. Chasing Amy, we did the one scene, but in Dogma, I was pretty messed up in the middle of it. But the rest, I was sort of sober. Jay and Bob, I guess Jay and Bob, I was hungover each morning, but I wouldn't be drunk or using while we were shooting. But I'm just saying, I feel like even where I could have been learning, because I would go early and I'd be part of the pre-production and post-production and be hanging with Kevin and stuff, I could have been learning some of the stuff there and spending more time with him and everybody else. But even when, like Jay and Bob, it's like, again, I wasn't using while we were shooting during the day, but I would go and drink every night. So it's like I really went in, it's like I'd wake up and sleep throughout the day on mats, like stunt mats and stuff, because I'd be hungover. So I just feel like I over the years, each movie I wouldn't really get to. I should have been soaking in information and getting to maybe hanging out with people and making relationships with
Making contacts.
All those different types of things I didn't do, because all I thought about was, I want to get through the day because I want to go drink tonight. That was on Jay and Bob. During Dogma, I was using while we were shooting, and I would sneak off to whenever we weren't like literally shooting, and they'd be like, hey, we got 20 minutes while we set up these lights. I would rush to my trailer and I'd be doing drugs in the trailer and stuff. And so I wouldn't be out and about, doing this or that. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it affected a lot of different things that I could have been learning more and stuff.
But you're sober now?
Yeah, it's been 7 years. I don't know the exact days today. I didn't count. And that's one of the things we do on a podcast, each podcast.
Well, I was going to say, this is get into that, because this is a really remarkable part of the podcast. You listen and you guys are laughing and you're joking around, and then it just changes to, how are you doing, Jay?
Yeah, so we towards the end of the show, we usually give an exact day. 7 years. I know. Today's the what? I won't give the exact
25th?
day. Maybe I'll save
25th.
it. Maybe I'll save it for the podcast, the exact day. But I do know it's 7 years, and I'm close to 2 months. So 7 years and 2 months. And I'll give the exact date on my podcast tonight. But so yeah, there's a portion of the show we come up to, and we usually give how many days, years, and such, and then we usually talk a few minutes about how things are and how things have changed since all the how I've been sober, and then having the kid, and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been awesome, and that's how the podcast started.
But what does that do for you? Like, what does that do in your recovery, having to talk to Kevin about it every week?
Oh no, well, I mean, again, definitely Kevin. Part of it's talking to Kevin and being accountable to Kevin, but it started mainly because him and I were talking about why I relapsed. I had almost 5 years, and then I relapsed, and Kevin just couldn't understand. He's like, I don't get how you were doing so well, and you had almost 5 years, and then you would go back and do it again, like do drugs again. And I told him that, I explained to him that at that point I felt like I wasn't really accountable to people. I wasn't going to meetings. And then I got kidney stones, and they gave me pain medicine. And where now I feel like, I talk to people about it, and I'm so open about it, and I'm accountable to so many people. I'm not saying I would take the pain medicine, but even if I had to take the pain medicine, I feel like, I could take it for the pain and then stop when I was done. Where there, it's like it sort of grabbed me again, and I wasn't accountable to him, because literally living. I just met who's my wife now, but then was just my girlfriend. And we like moved in together down by the beach, and literally no one wanted to. If you live in Santa Monica in California, and people live in Hollywood, which is where a lot of my friends lived,
Right.
no one wants to drive to Santa Monica because the traffic. Even though it's like with no traffic, it's
Right.
like 15 minutes. It takes like an hour.
So you were kind of by yourself down there.
So her and I were spending a lot of time alone, and she would go to school every day. She was going to UCLA at the time, so she would wake up, go to school, and I'd be sitting there by myself. And if I wasn't working, I literally had like all day and night to do nothing. So I sort of I was sitting in the house by myself, and I was taking the pain medicine for the pain, but then I started taking more for the pain and more pain. So yeah, I really do. I do felt like it was because I wasn't accountable. I wasn't talking to people. I wasn't going to meetings and sharing what was going on. And I sort of forgot after 4.5 years or whatever it was, how fast I could fall.
So this is checking in with. So this is checking
Sorry,
in with
that's
Kevin.
that's how the podcast started.
It was a chance for you
because-
guys to check in with one another.
and to everyone else, he's like, listen, even if it's only 50 people listening to the podcast each week, you're going to be accountable to them as well.
And you have people coming up to you at your shows who tell you that you, by talking about your addiction so honestly on stage, have encouraged them to seek out help with their own addiction. I mean, how does that feel?
Yeah, it's awesome. Again, that's something I didn't expect. Again, I thought it was all about me and helping me, but also, having some fun with Kevin and stuff like that. But yeah, throughout the 5-6 years, a good handful of people have come up and said that.
That must be amazing.
It is. It's really amazing. And again, this is one of the things I love about, I've been doing in the past like 2, maybe 3 years, I've been doing maybe 7, 8 cons, 10 cons,
Like comic cons?
comic book.
Right.
Yeah, there's
Right.
a lot of them now.
Yeah.
But horror conventions, comic book conventions. Kevin and I, anyway, and with the traveling on the tours and stuff, afterwards I usually take photos and selfies and say what's up and stuff. And yeah, there's been a good handful of people have come up and said that, and I get to really hear them. Like the last show I was at in Boston, this kid came up and he was crying and stuff, and it's interesting. It's amazing because the dude literally is like a grown man, and he started crying. He's like, "Dude, you don't understand how much your podcast helps." He's like, I was using, and I was towards the end of my rope, and I started listening to the podcast, and it helped me get by 1 day, and then 2 days, and then 3 days, and so yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. Something I didn't expect to get from the podcast was that. And again, with that being said, being accountable to people and then hearing stories like that, the first couple of years, I swear, I would literally wake up in sweats from in my dreams. I would have a dream that I drank, and then I'd be like, oh gosh, I have to tell everyone tonight on the podcast.
Well, yeah, 'cause that's the thing. You are also, when you say you're accountable,
Yeah.
I've heard there's a great songwriter named Jason Isbell who wrote a record about getting sober, and he said, I don't like talking about it too much because I feel like if I ever fall, I'm letting everybody else down.
Yeah, no, totally. I would totally feel that way, and that's what I mean. I would literally have bad dreams dreams that I drank or used, and then I'd wake up not realizing it's a dream for about 1 second, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to tell everyone now. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, good. So, but again, that part helps me because I don't want to disappoint people as at the same time being accountable and all that stuff. So it's really all around the podcast. I didn't expect how much I would get out of it. Like traveling. Again, before the podcast, I'd never been to Australia.
Yeah.
And Kevin and I have gone to Australia twice with the podcast.
Yeah.
So the show had brought us to a country I never thought I'd even get to go to.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
I want to ask you one question. We don't have much time left. I want to ask you
dude,
this.
I'm here all day, man. Forget about those other guys.
We're gonna put a little cot out. You and I are gonna sit down. We're gonna get a couple of recliners out. We're gonna watch Ironsides. At the end of the podcast, you realize when you're listening to it that you're listening to Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith. You're not so much listening to Jay and Silent Bob. But
Totally.
But the show is called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old.
Yeah.
And you go to Comic Cons, and you go to these horror cons, and people are excited. You heard that clip. You're Jay to so many people. How do you feel about Jay? Do you feel like you have a complicated relationship with the character? Do you feel good about the character?
And I mean, yeah, I guess so. Because again, in the beginning, and I still feel like it's me. It is actually me, even though there's different you know, this more exaggerated version of me. Because again, when Kevin wrote Clerks, he literally wrote Jay based on that's how I was 100% at that age, like 14, 15, 16.
Right.
Besides selling weed, I've never sold weed, but I used to smoke a lot of weed.
Yeah, it was similar to who you were.
Yeah, I used to pull my things out.
Sure, thank you.
All that crazy business. That is all those things, Snooch the Nooch, I've said that. Like Kevin wrote things down that I had said in the past 4 years, the 4 years prior of our friendship, he wrote down stuff. And then the next movie, you know, there was little tweaks of me in that. And even in Clerks 2, you know, at one point it says, the guy's like, hey, man, where you been? I've been like, oh, I got sentenced to 6 months in rehab for a deployed airbag. Like, that really happened to me.
Right. So how do you feel about the character? Like,
I mean, again, I'm all about, I dig the character. Again, I not about the weed. I think the selling was only to give a reason why we were outside of stores all the time.
Right.
And why we hung outside and how we made our living. But no, I mean, I'm all about the J, because again, it's me, but just an exaggerated. I'm not so obnoxious, and we'll see. Hopefully, all goes well. And before we have to go, we're hopefully shooting Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Yeah.
And just like the other movies, Kevin has, you know, the J in this new movie will be closer to the J of this.
The J of now.
So,
Jason Mewes,
many aspects.
it's been a pleasure having you in.
Thank you. Oh, there's a whole bunch of people back there.
There's
now.
a million people out there.